And we are with Tiemlord Tanya. Tiemlord Tanya, your TARDIS arrived at the Queen City Conquest,
It
and
did.
you ran one of the most popular games at the convention, from what I've seen.
Yeah,
And
all of my players absolutely loved it.
what? How? Tell me the story. Tell me about the people coming up to you. Tell me about the excitement about the build up to the game.
Okay. Well, I actually had quite a few people just randomly walk up to me before the game, and they asked me if I was actually the one running Doctor Who, and I said I am. And they would actually tell me that it's like that they were hearing great things about my game, and that they couldn't wait to sit at my table.
And how'd that make you feel?
Oh, it made me feel great.
Cool. So you get to the table, and how'd you begin? Did you do classic before the credits things? Did you jump right into it? Did you take it easy on them at the beginning, or did you just smash them in the face?
Oh, the doctor literally decided that he was going to go on vacation, and he just decided to just pick random uh, companions to accompany him on his holiday, and so it was whatever companions people chose. So there was Madame Vastra and Strax, Clara, Mickey Smith, and Jack Harkness. My Jack Harkness in my game, of course, being when he was still a time agent and before he was immortal.
Mm. And how many pre-gens did you have available to give people an idea of how random and different every running of this game could be?
I tend to have about a dozen or so pre-gens. Basically, I since a lot of my books are also on PDF, I just print off the pages, laminate them, and I have a dozen ready-made characters to go at every convention.
So they get to the planet on vacation, and I assume everything goes well, and they have pina coladas by the pool.
Well, it really wasn't pina coladas by the pool. It was actually more like champagne at the top of a massive skyscraper overlooking Neo Tokyo.
And the first sign that something was wrong.
The first sign something went wrong was when the meteor shower that everyone was all just gleefully watching. It's like oohing and eyeing over the pretty bright colored lights that were flashing across the sky. As one of those bright colored lights doesn't actually just suddenly flash bright and then dim immediately. It seems to keep getting brighter and bigger and closer. And why does that look like it's getting much, much too close before it actually crashes into the ocean uh, on the one side of the city? And then everybody's like, oh well, okay, we were actually a little worried it was going to actually crash into the city. Oh, it's fine then. Until until someone notices that the ocean is now seemingly boiling.
And how did they respond to that?
There was a lot of oh no's and a lot of gasps and a lot of sort of standing in awe, just sort of watching as an enormous, well, almost sea snake head just rises up out of the water, and these eight purple eyes open up, and it releases a mighty roar, and that's when they knew, oh no, kaiju.
How quickly were the players to realize this?
That was actually fairly quickly. Madame Vastra was actually just had actually been standing in the back of the room, just saying it's gonna go wrong. It's gonna go wrong. Even while everybody was like, "Oh no, it's fine." Well, she just assumed that a meteor was actually going to crash into the planet and create essentially another extinction event. That's what she was expecting
Mm,
because of what her people had actually endured before the rise of humanity.
right.
So that's what she was expecting. But she's just like, yeah, all right, it's a kaiju. Yeah, that actually probably would have been the second thing I would have guessed would have happened.
Which leads me to this question: how good of role players were they? How into their characters were they? How familiar with their characters? And were you generous with the story points at this point?
I honestly, I didn't. I tossed a few story points around, but not a whole lot. I didn't really have to. It kind of felt like everybody was just sort of kind of going with the flow and taking things as they came. And well, with a convention like setting where you're not actually playing the character, you know, every single week for a while, so you don't actually really have to keep track of story points. I don't really give out a lot of them at a convention unless it's really, really warranted, because they've already got, a healthy pool to take from. So unless I actually modify the story points to begin with, so that they're lower, as if the character had actually been out adventuring for a while, which actually is a pretty good tip if you want to ensure that not all the characters start with a healthy pool of points. I don't really find it necessary to give out a lot of story points, because a lot of them are already starting with, especially the human characters are already starting with 12 story points. Even I think Madame Vastra and Strax were starting with 6 or 8. I can't really quite remember how many they had, but everyone still had a fairly decent amount of story points. So I don't really tend to give out those so much in conventions.
Unlike me during the Ghostbusters game.
Unlike you during the Ghostbusters game, but then again, Savage Worlds is actually a game where is actually a system where having a lot of extra points in a pool to use for some really potentially bad situations is actually kind of a good thing. Because you tend to go through them very quickly in Savage World.
Especially when the crit happens rule comes into play.
Yes, and also the critical fumble, especially at a very critical time, and you're just like, oh, well, I have to make that go away.
Yeah, you don't want to see what I have to come up with on that.
Yeah, no, that actually happened in the second game that Savage World game that I played when I was doing the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen 1970s.
Yes, that's a great game.
I rolled a critical fumble at a bad time, and I said, oh, well, I can't have that happen.
Who did you play during that one?
I was Foxy Brown.
That's who I played when they ran it.
Yep. I'm like, yep, I'm taking this mama right here.
So, how quickly into the game before Strax started getting violent?
It actually took a little while. Madame Vastra actually kept a pretty tight leash on Strax. Vastra and Strax were actually played by husband and wife. So she's like, no, don't think about it. Before he would be even, let's blow it up. And then, of course, once the kaiju actually landed and started rising up out of the sea, then it's like, okay, now you can blow things up.
And how did they proceed?
Well, the very first thing they did was, since the observation deck that they were at was actually at the top of a mega shopping center. Because when you have a city like Tokyo, you can't really spread your mall out. You have to spread your mall up. So they found a sporting goods store that has all of the needs that you could possibly need, from your bows and arrows to your giant Gatling gun to service your Gundam. I mean, kind of depends on what you need. So yeah, they decided that they were going to load up on weapons at that point.
Even the doctor?
Yeah, actually, the doctor I played as an NPC.
Okay.
He just kind of wanted to get down there and kind of meet the monster close up, and then try to figure out what he was going to do. He didn't really. His first instinct wasn't to go out and stab it.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very doctor-like.
Yeah, no, the doctor was like, can we not? I would prefer. Can I get to the TARDIS first and then sort of pop over there and take a look, so that we're not, Yeah, so at that point, actually, half of the team split up. Even though the player who was playing Mickey Smith's going, we're going to split up the team, aren't we? From the very beginning of this, from the very beginning of the adventure, he goes, we are going to split the party. It's going to happen, isn't it? We're going to split the party, and things are going to go horribly, horribly wrong.
And did they?
Not as horribly as you might think. It had actually gone worse for my standard gaming group. They actually kind of fumbled for a while. They weren't really sure what they were going to do. But these guys actually kind of formulated a plan, even though half of them kind of wanted to kill it and the other half just kind of wanted to drive it back into the ocean. But they did actually kind of sort of formulate a plan.
What was the plan?
Well, Strax, Madame Vastra, and Jack, they all decided that they were going to load up on weapons and go try to kill it. The Dr. Clara and Mickey all decided that they were going to go back to the TARDIS. The problem was that the Doctor parked the TARDIS in a parking garage. He didn't actually get a parking ticket. Why would he? I mean, he parked the TARDIS. Why would he think of such things? And the player who was playing Clara actually went, I had thought that we should get a parking ticket for the TARDIS, but I was just like, nah, that's not going to become relevant. Why should I? And there was actually a giant boot just strapped to the front door of the TARDIS, and they had to go find the parking attendant to pay to get it off.
And who was successful with that? Was it Mickey or Clara?
Clara was. Clara actually, she's the one who went, okay, let's go find the parking attendant. And then she and the Doctor ran down to the first floor, while Mickey tried. He tried to pick the lock on the boot in order to actually get it off the TARDIS, but it wasn't coming.
So then what happened?
While that was happening, the other team basically, they decided to just go into combat with the kaiju as it started to slither its way into the city. And the way I had it was this kaiju was actually an electricity absorber. So it would actually, while it was coming in, it would rub up against buildings and basically suck the electricity out of it. And as it was coming closer into the city, it would actually start drawing more and more power. And entire blocks were starting to go dark. And, first they tried to shoot it. But because, of course, this is a massive creature, it was doing no damage to it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So Madame Vastra decided that she was going to attempt to climb on top of it and stab it.
How did that go?
That's when Madame Vastra was purposely spending story points so that when she actually tried to grab a hold, when she first tried to grab a hold of it, it was only just a fail. So she just literally couldn't grab a hold of it. It's not like she failed so badly that she actually tried to grab a hold of it, slipped and fell, and I was actually squashed underneath it. She actually just barely failed, so she didn't get a hold of it. She tried again, and that's when she decided she was going to start burning story points. So her success the second time around was like 25, which she's gonna grab a hold of it and swing up, and she got on its tail of its enormous snake body, and she basically started trying to stab it with her katana. And that's when she started actually burning story points.
And what was the advantage in that? How did you respond as a game master to a player who suddenly was on fire with their story points? Is there a consequence do you have for that? For when they get low and running out? Do you encourage that? Does that affect your telling of the story?
It depends on what it is. She basically when she started burning through story points, that's when she essentially, normally a tiny katana attacking a gargantuan creature would basically be almost nothing to it. but because she was rolling so phenomenally, basically the creature stopped cold and then just basically kind of like turned around to go, what is this thing on my tail? And essentially at that point attempted to basically, first it tried to shake her off. But then she actually started using story points in her agility rolls. And so she was actually managing to hold on to it as it was trying to throw her off. While at the same time, Strax actually kept trying to find ways to find guns that would actually impact the creature. He was getting upset that guns were doing no damage. And he's like, I need to blow something up. I need to. And so he was actually trying to find a way to create a massive explosive or something. And while at the same time also thinking, how am I going to actually make this thing swallow it? And it was turning into at that point they were basically keeping the creature in place so that it wasn't proceeding further into the city. Because originally the creature was going to proceed further into the city and basically slither up onto Tokyo Tower and basically just be a giant energy magnet and just cause the entire country to go dark, as it basically was a giant lightning rod and just sucked up all the power. And that's what originally was going to happen, but they stopped the creature cold. So instead, it had only just moved off of the shore and had started moving down the main avenue, and they basically managed to keep it in place for the Doctor to eventually get the boot off the TARDIS and to arrive.
So what did the Doctor and Clara do at that point?
Well, the Doctor decided he was going to get the creature's attention. So he had the TARDIS appear basically right next to its head, and he opened up the door, and Clara actually held onto his coat so that he wouldn't fall out, and he basically shouted out, "Oi, you! Yeah, you!" So I decided to make, an intimidation roll. I massively failed. And I said, "Oh, well, okay, Clara, I'm going to tell you what you're going to see as you're kind of peering over the Doctor's shoulder as you're holding onto his coat so he doesn't fall off. The Doctor got the creature's attention, all right. It turned around, it looked at you, it blinked with all 8 of its purple eyes, and then it decided to open its mouth and nom the TARDIS.
And
it swallowed it.
And how did they respond?
Well, Clara's like, oh God, I grabbed the Doctor, I haul him inside, and we shut the door. And then Mickey's just like, it ate us. Yeah, it ate us. And then he goes, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. This was going to happen, wasn't it? Yeah, it probably was going to. And Clara's just like, yeah, it probably was. Yeah. Yeah.
So did Strax blow up a building and make it fall onto the creature, or what would happen after?
Yes, that actually did happen.
That's what I would have done.
At that point, so with the creature being distracted by eating by basically turning around and eating the TARDIS, Vastra actually ran up the length of its back, swung up, and decided to attempt to basically kill it by stabbing it in its brain with her katana. Well, she barely succeeded. And that meant that she did actually manage to stab it in the head. She didn't manage to stab it in the brain. Mm-hmm. So basically, the creature just starts screeching and roaring in pain, and it just started thrashing around. And that's when Strax decided that he was going to blow up the corner of the building that it was next to, and hopefully the building would basically fall on top of the creature.
Yeah.
Not thinking that Madame Vastra was actually, on its head.
Yeah.
Because why would he think of that?
No,
he wouldn't think of that.
Good soldiers would know that the building is about to fall on them.
Yeah, basically, Vastra's like, okay, are you going to allow me to see if I can actually notice that the giant skyscraper next to us is crumbling down? Yes, I will allow you to make that roll. And she's like, I'm burning a story point to do it. Okay.
She had story points left?
Not by the end. By the end of that, she actually was completely tapped out, and Clara's player actually moved a couple of points over to her. Of course, it was by then, that's when they heard another roar off in the distance, and then I looked down the avenue, and there is a giant humanoid marine iguana that is slowly making its way toward them, and they're like, oh no, it's Godzilla. We are spooked.
So the TARDIS was still inside of the kaiju, buried underneath the rubble.
Buried underneath the rubble. Yep.
And Godzilla shows up, then what?
Well, Godzilla had actually showed up to essentially take care of the monster. Because that's what the story was. That, Godzilla was, the thing was going to wrap itself around Tokyo Tower, and Godzilla was going to see it and go, oh, I need to take care of that, because that's going to destroy my city. But Godzilla just kind of showed up and looked down and just kind of went, Rrr. He's like, oh, well, this has been taken care of, hasn't it? And at that point, the doctor, with Clara's help, actually manages to essentially move the TARDIS out of the creature's belly before Godzilla decides that it's going to pick up the serpent creature and basically just sort of drag it back out into the ocean.
Cool.
As Strax is also attempting to shoot Godzilla.
Okay.
And Godzilla got a little bit annoyed and decided to step on Strax. He's like, there is something down here attempting to prick my foot. Oh, well, I'll just squash it.
And what happened to Strax?
Well, Strax rolled to dodge that, and he barely succeeded. So basically what I said is, okay, Strax, you do actually get kind of squashed under Godzilla's foot. Fortunately for you, though, you managed to roll next to a car that actually takes most of the impact. So you're just kind of pushed into the pavement a little bit, and your armor just kind of absorbs the rest, and you're just like, yeah, okay, I'm squashed a little, as Godzilla just moves off.
So how did the players enjoy the game in full?
They loved it. All of them said that they absolutely had a phenomenal time. The player who was playing Clara, she said that she had a couple of teenagers that she's been trying to get into the game, and she had actually asked me if it was okay that she could borrow the scenario idea so that she could sort of try to get them interested in it. And I just picked up my adventure as written with the 2 kaiju character sheets, and I handed them to her, and I said, here you go. It's like, I'll just let you have it. You don't have to borrow the idea. Just take it.
How did she respond to that?
She was thrilled. She's like, she just went, really? You're actually just going to give this to me? And I said, yeah, why not? I could just print it off again.
Awesome. And the other players?
They loved it. They're just like, that was a great game. And I was just like, I'm glad you had fun. That's the whole point.
How did they respond positively to different elements of the system? Were there things about the system that they were talking about, or they're like, oh my god, that is so Doctor Who, as things came through, or the story points,
really.
or the running rules, or?
Honestly, most of them were really kind of familiar with it already.
Oh wow!
Actually, my one player who was playing Mickey, he obviously had played the game before. He actually told me while he was doing things. He actually used a few keywords that actually I'm just like, oh yeah, you played this game before. Yeah, it was obvious he had obviously played it before. And my other players were also familiar with it. It's not that they had actually played it before, but they actually seemed to own copies of the game, so they were familiar with the rules. My last player who was playing Jack, he was 14, 15. I think he was at my table last year too. So he was kind of familiar with the rules too. So everyone at my table was already familiar with the game.
That's a rarity for a convention.
Yes, that's the first time that has ever happened that everyone at my table was actually familiar with the specific rule system.
So what did you learn as a GM from this session?
Well, I learned that even that I'm kind of used to a lot of my Doctor Who characters not being so gung ho and let's go slay the monster. I'm actually used to most of them sort of hanging back and going, maybe we should watch and see what happens. And so actually, Madame Vastra basically running up and saying, let's slay the beast, was actually a bit of a new thing for me. I'm kind of used to that more with my, my action adventure D&D groups, as opposed to Doctor Who. So that was actually a little different. I was just like, all right.
You just ran with it and let it happen.
Yeah, just ran with it. I when it comes to something like Doctor Who, when I actually write up an adventure, I basically write an overall plot scenario, and whatever the players do is going to be how it goes. Like this time, the creature actually basically was stopped cold when essentially attacked by Vastra and Strax and Jack, but my previous gaming group, they essentially had gotten the creature's attention, and they had basically stolen a car. Someone hotwired a car. I don't remember who it was. It might have been Mickey.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think it actually was Mickey. And they got into the car, and they basically teased the monster enough so that it started chasing them back toward the ocean. And while simultaneously the Doctor was actually building a bomb inside the car. So that what was going to happen was that they were basically going to stop the car, everyone was going to get out, and the Doctor was essentially going to start a timer, and they were actually hoping that the monster would essentially attempt to eat the car, and that's what they were planning on. Once they realized that the monster at first wasn't really going to eat the car, he was basically going to attempt to smash it. Somebody had an idea of to basically use one of their energy rifles as basically a giant lure to basically overload its fuel cells and to actually make that monster want to eat it. Because it's an electricity eating creature, so they're just like, I know, let's actually bait the car with a lure. And so the Doctor basically rewired Strax's pulse rifle to basically be a lure, and that's actually how they basically defeated the monster, was that they had actually gotten the monster to eat the car bomb, and then it swallowed it, and then a couple turns later it basically blew out its guts.
And then Godzilla shows up.
And then Godzilla shows up and goes, huh, well, looks like I don't have to do anything here. And then just walk right back into the ocean.
So in your session here, it sounds like there wasn't much use of the jiggery-pokery rules. Was there?
Not really. Not really. There really wasn't much use of the jiggery-pokery rules. The first time around with my regular gaming group, there was. This time, not so much.
What else surprised you about that session?
Well, besides the fact that everyone is actually familiar with the rules, well, not a whole lot, really. I mean, I've been a GM for quite a few years now, so there's not a whole lot that surprises me. Every so often, I'll get a gem where somebody will just kind of make me go, huh, okay, yeah, do that thing. But most of the time, yeah, it's not really that much of a shock.
Yeah. Well, it was a good time at Queen City Conquest, and I was glad to get to hang out with you guys quite a bit.
Yeah, it was a very fun time. Loved Manos Hands of Fate.
Okay, was that the first time you played 5th edition?
That was the first time I played 5th edition. My husband had actually played it before, but that was my first time.
How'd you like it?
I liked it. It reminded me a lot of 3rd edition.
Cool. And it would start off with an 8th level character as your first character too.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of used to that, honestly. Actually the very first time I slung dice in 96 ish. I actually started with a third level ranger.
Cool. Well, thank you, Tiemlord Tanya, for joining us and sharing about the exciting game of from Queen City Conquest of Doctor Who. And are you going to be making this game available on your blog at all, or?
Yes, I actually do have a blog. I can always provide you with a link. I actually do have to update some. I actually do have to update my gaming blog with some information and some pictures from Queen City Conquest, as well as stories of games played.
Cool.
So I can in fact make that available to you to post on the threat detected if you want to.
Absolutely. Share that, message me that, and I will put that in the show notes for everybody to find.
Alrighty.
And you have a wonderful evening, and I think I am going to Olive Garden for a wonderful dinner.
Ooh, actually, spaghetti's on the menu here too.
Yay! Cool. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.